Welcome everybody to the DC New 52 review. I want to thank you for tuning into another episode. I am your host as always, Pauly DC, and let's get into another one of these things. Today I will discuss All Star Western Vol.2. It was titled War of Lords and Owls, and it was written by Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti, with art by Moritait, and issues 7 to 12 were released between May and October of 2012. During the events of Volume 1, our two stars, Jonah Hex and Amadeus Arkham, worked in unsteady partnership among the mean streets and caves of 1880s Gotham City, meeting the secretive group known as the Crime Bible, doing battle with cannibal natives and giant bats, and then breaking up a child slave labor camp in the city's sewer system. Their next target now is possible mastermind of that operation, Thurston Moody, which has brought them to New Orleans, Louisiana, and that is where things continue. Issue number 7 starts on a sunny day in New Orleans, with Jonah and Amadeus arriving by boat, only to be first greeted by a massive explosion in a factory by the docks. So Hex jumps on a horse to ride over, and he goes on to save a quartet of people, almost burning to death in the process. Apparently, his injuries are so severe that assistance from a duo of locals is needed, and as the guy Hannibal places a magic necklace on him, the girl Kate tries to give his ugly mug mouth to mouth. Brave gal. Later that night, Jonah wakes up in their house with Arkham, and it's found out that he's old friends with his two saviors, who now ask him for help with an immigrant murdering ring called August 7, which were responsible for the earlier bombing. But when they get denied, Hex gets sort of forced into helping them by Hannibal thanks to a nice broken nose after being told the necklace from a synagogue gives the one wearing it powers. More on that in the backup stories. Jonah then decides to hit the town and finds himself in a popular fighting arena where he meets a fellow former Confederate named Hiram McCoy and his wife Lenore. No comment on the highly questionable comments the main character also makes here. Poof. The two then start to chat as a fight takes place, and it is said that the female involved, Z.C. Bronte, is a friend of McCoy's, which leads into a lot of words being said just to make a David and Goliath reference, because ZC was fighting a massive opponent but still defeated him. The reason for the metaphor here? Pertaining to how the ideologies of the South during the Civil War are continuing to be spit on due to all the immigrants coming over to the USA now. Major yikes. Cutting back to our other three, Amadeus is finding out that Hannibal and Kate are actually vigilantes known as Nighthawk and Cinnamon. Hannibal Hawks goes back to Western Comics number 5, 1948 by Joe Millard and Charles Paris, while Kate Manser debuted in Weird Western Tales number 48, 1978 by Roger McKenzie, Jack Abel, and Danny Bullinotti. I also liked how Arkham tells them that Gotham won't ever need a vigilante. He is right. It won't need one, it'll need 15. Things then finish up with Jonah entering the fight pit and being called Scarface, which I'm sure a young boy in the audience heard and then went home to grow up and write the 1932 classic of the same name. His gargantuan enemy is then announced as, Jesus. Looks more like a bigger Dalsum from Street Fighter to me, but anyway, he gets beat down in 4 seconds flat, thus garnering a challenge from Rose Wilson's great-great-great-grandmother. Issue number 8 begins with Nighthawk and Cinnamon beating their way across the city looking for clues on August 7, while Arkham is in an opium-induced stupor. Because why not? Hex, meanwhile, is in mid-fight with ZC, who was shown to be highly proficient with bladed weapons last issue, but for some reason doesn't use them now, and after some highly unneeded looks at certain parts of her body, she... Alright, what the hell kind of weird-ass fetish am I seeing here now? Moving on. Right before Hex and ZC raw dog it in front of the whole audience, McCoy orders her to make Jonah an offer while she washes him in a steampunk bathtub. The offer is join them by completing the initiation task of blowing up a ship full of immigrants. Yes, she is August 7 and Hex has now found them. He takes this info back to Hannibal and Kate, wherein differing opinions on what to do cause a rift between them, forcing Hex to grab their special necklace before pulling a gun on them and then saying he will handle things alone. Back over to Arkham, he is high as hell when the opium den he's in gets raided and all inside are arrested by police captain Montan Eater, later resulting in Amadeus making a new friend when in jail who we won't see again, even though it would have been a good setup for the big guy to help him somehow later on. Anyway, Captain Montan releases Arkham after finding out he's connected in Gotham, but when it's mentioned Jonah Hex is an associate of his, guns get pointed at his head. Speaking of our main character, his plan was to deceive ZC and go along with the ship bombing, except when he goes to meet the red-coated contact of hers for explosives, Amadeus is found tied up in a crate instead, and Jonah meets the septet that make up the August 7. And now we know that Montan is the law that Nighthawk and Cinnamon said the group had in their pocket earlier. The leader, Davis Winter, steps forward saying the ship of immigrants will sink, so Hex and Arkham are sent out onto the water with Red Coat Guy. Issue number 9 kicks off with a pretty good twist being revealed when Jonah uses the special necklace to spring an attack on Red Coat Guy, killing him with a crossbow he was holding, which is followed by Nighthawk and Cinnamon jumping the other August 7 members, while Amadeus explains that the whole plan involving last issue's events were planned by Hex. I definitely thought that the doc indulging in opium was odd, but hey, Asian opium parlors back then were abundant as pot shops are in Canada these days. The August 7 members are subdued, ending with the leader Davis losing multiple teeth, but now that they're done with, why that name for the group? I get that there's 7 of them, but where did the August come from? I don't know and I don't care. Jonah has now earned a favor from Nighthawk and Cinnamon, so they divulge info on Thurston Moody, who, if you remember, in Volume 1 had a rather interesting owl fondness seen in his house, which ties this series partly into the Court of Owls crossover. Moody is running across another part of New Orleans because he's being chased by the court's top assassin called the Talon, and this one appears to be a woman who is now targeting Thurston due to his involvement with Jonah. Speaking of him, he intervenes the attack, or maybe not. Moody is killed anyway, while the only thing Hex and Amadeus discover is the owl dagger the Talon used to dispatch him. We also find out here that Jonah once had a wife who was from China, and Arkham cannot believe it, but doesn't get the opening words of a question out regarding who she was before receiving a punch to the face. The man just risked a possible prison love sesh or shanking for you, and that is how you repay him? The last scene jumps 3 weeks ahead in Gotham, where an unnamed Wayne family member is entertaining some of the town's shadier types in his casino, and they discuss purchasing land one way or another for business ventures, thus bringing in tough, one-eyed cowgirl Tallulah Black, who says that these men killed her family and she is now ready for revenge. Only problem is one of the men named Lucius Bennett had a masked matador-looking bodyguard ready, and he ends up tossing Tallulah 2 stories to the ground right at the recently returned Jonah's feet. Issue number 10 picks up right from the previous one, starting with the mysterious masked matador in maroon, wisping away while the casino owner, now said to be Alan Wayne, scolds Lucius for what just happened, and things don't get much better from there as they declare war on each other for territory up for grabs. If you were reading Batman, you already know the Waynes won Gotham, but poor old Alan ended up meeting a rather frightening death in 1922. No spoilers here. Jonah not only tends to Tallulah's injuries, but the next day, when waking up in Arkham Manor, we find out that he also trained her and then gave her some of that hex sex. Sorry, that was a bit degenerate. Jonah winds up taking off to go see Alan Wayne right after Mother Arkham starts disturbingly screaming. We haven't seen her yet, but I don't think it's gonna be nice when we do. The next morning, if it wasn't pretty obvious already, Miss Black is basically a female version of the guy who trained her, and it's on full display here as she scares Amadeus into pissing his pants, garnering a rare laugh from the recently returned Jonah, who wastes zero time getting Tallulah upstairs so they can, talk and stuff like that. Meanwhile, Arkham heads to a police station where he meets a possible ancestor to Jason Bard and then tries to speak with some loony prisoner called Mr. Rennington about how a female owl is out to get him. Amadeus is then kind of attacked, forcing him to leave the room, but upon return moments later, Mr. Rennington and Bard are dead with nothing but an owl feather left behind. We actually get to see the late 1800s version of the Court of Owls next, as 4 of the members mentioned Thurston Moody helped them build their underground labyrinth maze. Makes sense considering he was head of Gotham Sanitation, but now they're discussing their new enemy, the Followers of Cain, who Lucius Bennett seems to be involved with, and also how Hex, Arkham, and Tallulah can be used in their grand plans. Issue number 11 opens on Amadeus making a journal entry regarding the Court of Owls, with us seeing their freaky nursery rhyme for the first time in this series. Over at a bridge called Cobblepot Pass, that family really has made their mark on Gotham as well here. Lucius is speaking with an associate named Ethan over losing a land bid to Alan Wayne, bringing in mentions of his elimination. The duo's stagecoach is then stopped by Tallulah and Jonah, so the driver, shown to be the masked matador, tries to defend them, and he is called Mr. Baroque, an interesting title for this pretty cool character, and he's dead. Bullet to the head by Jonah. Tallulah went after Lucius, and right before her revenge is seeked, the Talon surprises her with a blade to the leg and then disappears in a puff of smoke with Lucius in order to treat him to a more private death, aka hanging him by a noose off a bridge. 5 of the Followers of Cain are seen after this, with their names and what criminal activity they specialize in being listed beneath them. They are also worshippers of the Crime Bible, saying that Alan Wayne, Jonah, Arkham, and Tallulah must die. No wasting time here. There's also talk of Mayor Cobblepot, with him being described exactly like future descendant Oswald. Can extremely intricate criminal behavior be a genetic trait or something? Moving on, Hex, Arkham, and Tallulah get grabbed by corrupt cops. What's up with Jonah being able to take down the shaman on super steroids earlier, but can't handle a rotund policeman with one friggin' eye here? Oh boy. The trio are taken to Slaughter Swamp in a prison cart where they're drugged and then strung up in a steamer room, only for Tallulah to escape the place the second they get left alone. Issue number 12 concludes this storyline, starting with Hex and Arkham about to be steam burned to death. So it is all up to Tallulah, and she goes full on every outlaw gunslinger you can name, beginning with cutting down a couple of dirty cops silently while all the others search around. The first of the 5 followers of Cain / crime Bible thumpers, named Stephen Chaos, spelled Kaoss, not the other way, and you guessed it, he's Lord of Peace and Order. Just kidding, he's the Lord of Chaos. Goes on to get his head hacked off by an axe. Clarion the Witch Boy would not be impressed. Lorna Kyle, the Lord of Thieves and probable past relative to Selena Kyle, is targeted next due to Miss Black acquiring some pistols. So after more bad cops are wasted, the two ladies get in real close for a fight wherein Tallulah gives Lorna the Oberyn Martell treatment, even after taking 2 knives to the shoulders. Jonah is rather enjoying the sound of the activity above, and then goes on to say that he cut a deal with Alan Wayne after the two had a big shootout against some crime Bible flunkies in his casino earlier. A simple quid pro quo that involved Wayne and some good cops assisting Tallulah when found in the swamp right as Arkham is yelling and insulting their foes in hilariously psychoanalytic manner. Alan and Tallulah are then able to save him and Hex before Evan Charles, Lord of Extortion, burns them away. More like Loser of Extremities, but anyway, the last 2 enemies, Lord of Assassins, Jackson Dugar, and Charlotte the Harlot, you can put together what she's Lord of all by yourself, are taken into custody and days later are victims of the gallows on Mayor Cobblepot's authority. Arkham here is also asking Alan if possible investments could be made for turning his home into an asylum. Don't do it, man. Oh, and the scene before this one with Hex telling Tallulah they're not staying together, spurring a fight and then intercourse right in front of Amadeus. Wow. Just wow. The final pages then consist of our 2 leads being approached by dapper gentleman Reginald Forsyth, asking for a meeting with them regarding his boss, Dr. Jekyll. There were 3 backup stories in this volume, so let's start off with Nighthawk and Cinnamon. Their story is an origin tale along with their recent acquirement of the special power-bestowing necklace which started with them picking a fight with Bob Robertson's gang. Yes, his name is Robert Robertson. Nighthawk is shown to have left his home as a kid and joined the whaling crew of Captain Mon Bell, a former slave and really well put together character for one who's only on 3 pages due to being murdered in an alleyway in front of Hannibal. And because of the lessons Mon Bell taught him, he chooses to do the hero thing. Seriously, out of all the ways I've heard people describe God, his is a new one. After the main duo gets beaten down by Bob's gang, they get tossed into a mine shaft wherein Kate remembers her childhood, losing her sheriff father at the hands of Robertson, and then being put in orphanages where she picked up the Cinnamon nickname from bullying girls. So, Kate decided to take off on a stolen horse, only to nearly die in the desert and be rescued by an enigmatic traveling Japanese swordsman named Ichi, who taught her how to fight and to use a sword and shurikens. The two now continue their way into the mines where they mention that they are friends with Lazarus Lane, aka El Diablo, and then they find 2 Mayan corpses wearing necklaces that are taken by them. Real damn lucky y'all didn't get cursed over getting superpowers, but if you only had one earlier with Jonah, where's the other one? Who knows? Once the duo escapes, they head to Louisiana where they take down some of Robertson's gang in a flooded, gator-infested graveyard. That's actually a really cool and unique setting. But anyhow, a trap is set for Bob at a carnival event, and after getting freaky into the moonlight, they conclude their business with Bob by blowing up his estate, wiping out his gang, and instead of arresting him like Nighthawk wants, Cinnamon kills him with a literal throwing star. And then the two decide to set up shop in New Orleans. The second story is led by Batlash, having been created by Joe Orlando, Sheldon Mayer, Carmine Infantino, and Sergio Argoniez in Showcase number 76, 1968. Here, it's pretty much just a quick get-to-know the character thing before, well, let me get there in a minute. Bat is a poker hustler, saloon brawler, self-appointed ladies' man who clearly knew exactly what he wanted at a very, very young age, and also lost his parents. Either than that, these few short pages consist of a Western episode of the Moritait show featuring certain things I'm a bit nervous to even explain in this review in such detail, so how about we just move on? The third and final story stars Dr. Terrence 13, a so-called ghost doctor who has a couple different variations debuting in Star Spangled Comics number 122, November 1951 by, fascinatingly, an unknown writer, but first drawn by Leonard Starr. His story features 1881 Gotham with an opening similar to that of Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow movie. A terrified stagecoach driver is trying to escape the not headless horseman, but the haunted highwayman, who ends up robbing those he was pursuing. This garners a visit to Dr. 13 by the victims, who are told it's no ghost, but 13 does wish to crack the case after an appointment with Amadeus Arkham. First, Terrence just tries to get the haunted highwayman arrested with some cops, but he's able to escape thanks to a flame weapon. Dr. 13 now suspects that his target is well educated in chemistry, so a university is visited and he finds a disgruntled professor named James Rood got recently fired and is suspected of stealing certain chemicals. Terrence and the cops then locate Rood in his Slaughter Swamp home, where a brief fight goes down, resulting in James's wife being shot dead, which he naturally blames Dr. 13 for savagely cursing him before being hung for his crimes. Well, we know who's coming back as a real ghost, whether 13 believes in that or not. Alright. Let me start with the plot, and because this is my first Volume 2 review, I'm going to include continuity stuff in this segment. The unfinished Thurston Moody business got handled early, explaining his Court of Owls ties, along with expanding more on the Crime Bible Followers of Cain group as well. And I almost forgot that Mr. Baroque was seen briefly in Volume 1 before he was unceremoniously shot in the face here. Aside from him, only Alan and Mayor Cobblepot were in both books so far, having both remained minor characters. Now, for what was newly presented here, Hex and Arkham's Western adventure action stayed on point in a series where that's exactly what you were expecting. The mix of characters from old to original meshed in well together, but almost all the villains seemed like throwaways. The book's title had Owl in it, but a Talon only showed up twice and the Court of Owls once. Just a lot of build up for that, plus a side character was the one to wipe out the quintet of Crime Bible buffoons that first looked like they were gonna be something substantial. Getting into dialogue next, after 2 volumes, and also important for me to mention here that writers stayed the same for the whole run, I can confidently assume that the way that the 2 leads engage in conversation was one of the main reasons this title got over 30 issues. The side characters are good and bad, they add their pieces, while the backup story's dialogue shined in this one. Nighthawk and Cinnamon were good, but the Terrence 13 script was really great. Rounding out with the art, I don't want to copy and paste what I said for Volume 1 with this creative team being the same, but the only thing I will say is all the women still look marginally the same. The steampunk aspects in Louisiana were pretty cool, every fight scene was superb in layout, and the various designs of every character, minor or major, were something to look forward to. I'm going to bring things to a close here, and if you have watched until the end, I want to personally thank you for that, and to please like, share, and subscribe. Please follow me on all my social media platforms, and to please join me next time for Batman Volume 2 and the Night of the Owls crossover.